Mom sees own son in Nanny's newborn baby photos. Deborah covered her hand with her mouth in horror. She didn't want her suspicions to be correct, but they tragically were. The photo her nanny reluctantly showed her was proof of what she had been doing. She thought she could trust her, but it seemed she'd taken that trust and thrown it out the window. What's even more, she had involved her son, her life. Now she would regret ever messing with her family. Deborah Hill was a passionate single mother and the only person to care for her son. His father was out of the picture and didn't send support to him. But Deborah didn't care. She would do whatever it took to ensure he got the best out of life. But Deborah came across a problem. And once she came up with a solution, she thought that all of her worries would end. But she would be gravely mistaken once she found out what was happening behind her back. Even though Deborah tried desperately to spend as much time with her son as she could, she also had to work 5 days a week to make sure that she and her child could eat and live in their middle-class house. So Deborah needed someone to watch young Aiden while she was at work. She had a bad experience with daycares, so she knew she'd have to hire a nanny to make sure her bundle of joy was okay while she provided for him. Now that Aiden was a toddler, she felt that she could leave him in the hands of someone trustworthy while she worked at her job. She just needed someone to keep an eye on him between 9 and 5 every weekday. So Deborah decided to get a nanny. One that seemed trustworthy and kind. But what Deborah wasn't aware of was how much more her nanny would do than just keep an eye on her angel. After a few interviews, Deborah was sure of who would make the cut. She liked the look of a young woman named Jessie Green. She had a good track record and seemed passionate and attached to children. She started immediately, and soon Deborah was enjoying her workday stress-free knowing her son was in good hands. She could be productive at work and even felt that Jessie was the only person helping her. Little did she know that she was terribly wrong. One day Jessie randomly brought up the fact that she also had a child. She happened to be the same age as Aiden and was a good mother. Deborah felt that it was a little weird that she had only brought up her daughter after working for her for 2 months. Deborah shook the feeling off and decided to think nothing of it. Who would lie about having a child anyway? Soon it was nothing more than a thought in the back of her mind, but things would take a drastic turn that she could never have seen coming. Deborah kept working while Jessie looked after Aiden for the next month. But then something clicked. If she wanted to find out more about the child that Jessie claimed to have, she could just look her up on social media. She knew her name. After all, who didn't have social media in this day and age? So she typed her name into the search engine and found a list of profiles. She looked through each one, hoping to find the right person. Deborah skimmed through dozens of Jessie Greens until her eyes landed on one. She saw the familiar kind smile and bright eyes. She decided to click on it and look even further. But things became even weirder. There were dozens of photos of her and her daughter posing together. The child was wearing a dress and smiling at the camera. Only something was off. Deborah didn't quite know why. It was her eyes. Deborah took one look at her daughter's eyes and a pang of familiarity washed over her. Was it because they were like her mother's? No, it wasn't that. They were familiar for a completely different reason. But to know for sure, she would have to confront her son's nanny and make sure her suspicions could be dismissed or justified. She just had to wait to get home until she could uncover the truth. Deborah clocked off and started the long drive home. The entire time thinking about the photos she had just seen. She finally found herself in her driveway and parked the car before walking in through the front door. Once in the door, she greeted Jessie and then took a deep breath. She looked into her eyes and asked her to show her a photo of her daughter. Jessie seemed reluctant but finally gave in. But after Deborah saw the photos, there would be no going back. Deborah covered her hand with her mouth in horror. She didn't want her suspicions to be right, but they tragically were. The photo her nanny reluctantly showed her was proof of what she had been doing. She thought she could trust her, but it seemed she'd taken that trust and thrown it out the window. What's even more, she had involved her son, her life. Now she would regret ever messing with her family. It had finally clicked with Deborah. The reason why the eyes felt so familiar was that they were eyes she saw every day when she got home and when she woke up. The girl in the photos was no girl at all, and she wasn't Jessie's daughter. In fact, the person in the photo wasn't even a daughter at all. The eyes staring back at her were those of her son. He was dressed up as a girl and he looked very convincing. But how was this possible? Deborah started shaking with anger and confronted Jessie about it. She broke down and confessed to everything. She had been dressing up Aiden while Deborah was at work and passing him off as her daughter. Deborah couldn't believe what she was hearing. What motivations could Jessie possibly have for dressing up her son and humiliating him like this? But once she found out the truth, she felt her whole world turn upside down. Jessie spilled everything. She told Deborah that she had stated on her social media that her daughter from the photos had heart complications and that she needed money for her medical condition. It was all a scam to try and get some money out of charitable people that thought that they were helping a poor little girl, not a selfish woman without a child. Deborah knew what she had to do next. Deborah knew that she had to keep her son safe at all costs, and she would never let anyone take advantage of him or her. She decided to do the only thing that seemed logical, she fired Jesse on the spot. Tears streamed down Jesse's face, but Deborah had no sympathy. She took back her keys and waited for her to leave the house before going to talk to Aiden. Aiden was thankfully okay and told her that he thought it was only dress up.